hilarious. That's totally not what I meant to hit. So I guess we're starting now. Here we go. Bolt breakdowns not brought to you by Alex or. Good morning, everyone. This is why we never go live on a Sunday. It's been an episode of Bolt breakdowns, I guess. I can do the music if you still want me to.
Yeah, I was over on a different tab and I was like, what is going on right now?
Yeah, I think the mouse got stuck and I hit something else. So anyway,
Yeah.
Hey everyone.
Just real quick, just so we're in rhythm. Here we go. All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. I apologize for the double intro there, but we had to restart. Sometimes you just need a little refresher, and we'll get back into rhythm today. My name is Steven. I am the host, as always. I apologize for the tone of my voice. I am sick, so in classic fashion, Brooke and I went out and celebrated our anniversary last night, and then we both woke up today, and we're both feeling sick, so we're going to power through today on the show, and then I'm probably going to sit on my couch the rest of the day. So we'll see how it goes. But joining me, as always, is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing today?
I am completely 100% healthy, and I still am also going to sit on my couch the entire rest of the day. It is football. That's the plan.
Yes. When we planned this, I kind of forgot that there was a London game going on.
I had no idea.
The Jets and Vikings are playing right now, which is kind of crazy. And Aaron Rodgers has been injured and trying to play through it. So me and Aaron are kind of standing in solidarity today of pushing through something. So it should be kind of fun. All right. So we are going to take your questions today. That is going to drive the conversation. Obviously, super chats are always appreciated and encouraged, and that will ensure that your questions get answered. But Tyler and I wanted to start by having a conversation about this Chargers defense. We spoke about them briefly on Wednesday, but it was kind of in a sense of appreciating what Jesse Minter has done so far. And I think we want to have this conversation about where this defense can go. Are they a legitimate top 10 threat? What's the ceiling of this unit? I mentioned this on Wednesday, but they're currently second in EPA per play, second in success rate. They're first in points per game allowed at 12.3 points per game, which is crazy. They're second in yards per play allowed and third in yards per game allowed. So by all the metrics, regardless of what you're looking at, this is a top 5 defense through 4 weeks. We'll see how that kind of changes today. So Tyler, what are you buying and what are you selling about this Chargers defense and the ceiling of where Jesse Minter can take this thing after 4 weeks?
Yeah, I'm buying Jesse Minter, period, as is. I think this is a defense, I should say, that yes, can now their ceiling is now top 10. I didn't think they'd get there. I thought middle, like 11 to 16, could be possible for their ceiling. And maybe that's where they end up ultimately. But their ceiling is definitely in the top 10 at this point. The defense is playing phenomenal. The structure, the scheme is there. They have, it just depends on where it is, but they have enough depth at different positions where I think they can manage. I think the Elijah Molden trade is really helping with that defensive back depth too.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big one to help them out. Obviously, the secondary has been playing far above expectation so far. Puna Ford, Otito Igbonia, these guys playing well. So I do think it is the ceiling as a top 10 unit. We'll see how things go. I was looking at the schedule and like what's changed, what's different. And I think that there's more offense on their schedule than maybe I expected heading into the season, at least in terms of like what they had to face. Like we knew, okay, Marvin Harrison Jr. is in a couple of weeks. I get that. The Bengals are the Bengals, although they're 1-3, so we'll see. But I'm not counting them out by the time we get to that point. Baltimore, we expected to be good. Obviously, Kansas City, we expected to be good. But I wasn't sure, like, okay, how is Tampa Bay going to do without Canales? How is Baker going to be able to do this again this year? And it seems like that's the case. We just saw the Falcons, Kirk Cousins throw over 500 yards. The Saints are right now a top 5 offense in EPA per play. So there's a lot more offense in front of them than maybe I expected. Granted, we also have the Broncos coming up twice. The Raiders are trying to get rid of Devontae Adams. So, maybe things are a wash in the end. But still, I think there's a bit better offense on the schedule than I thought heading into the season. So ultimately, maybe they settle like just outside the top 10 because like In an ideal world, and what they're currently doing, sure, of course, like they could be a top 10 defense. Injury here, bad day there, things change. It's Chargers football. Unfortunately, at some point, there may be something that doesn't go so well, or there's an injury. It just happens. If Khalil Mack goes down, or I don't know, if Christian Fulton goes down, like we're feeling different about this defense, I think. So I think they ultimately settle outside the top 10, but much closer to it than I would have expected.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I kind of pictured heading into the season, like the ceiling was maybe like top 16, like league average ish. And, that part has definitely been elevated. You mentioned a couple of the key pieces there. Poona Ford and Otito Ogbonia are playing fantastic. Teair Tart solidifying the depth of that spot has been a great addition. Same thing with Elijah Molden. And we talked about this on Wednesday. They're playing so much zone coverage that they are telling us that they don't trust their corners, and it still is kind of not really mattering. So I think at some point their lack of a true CB1 and their lack of ability to play man coverage will show up in some games, like when they play the Cincinnati Bengals. What is that going to look like when you can't play man coverage against Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Andre Yoshivas, and Eric All, who unsurprisingly looks great in Cincinnati. They also have Tanner McLaughlin just kind of chilling on the practice squad there. So that's kind of cool for them. But overall, like you look over the next 4 weeks, and the Saints are top 5 in EPA right now, but they've had 2 awful games in a row. The Broncos are not exactly a powerhouse offense. The Cardinals are, they're kind of teetering on top 10. I think Kyler is kind of had some struggles early in the season. And then they play the Browns and the Titans, who are awful offenses. So once we get to week 11, when they play the Bengals, this probably still is like a top 8, maybe top 6 defense in terms of all of the numbers that we're talking about. But then they get into the real tests of, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chiefs again. I do expect the Chiefs offense to be better that week than they were this past week. So I do kind of think that they settle in maybe in like the 8 to 12 range, which still is a massive, massive win for this Chargers defense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a little concerned about the cornerback room. Obviously if anything happens to Khalil Mack, then this pass rush just goes from right now they're kind of a league average pass rush, which is kind of unfortunate.
Weird. Yeah.
But if Khalil gets injured, then this goes into like worst pass rush in the league territory in a hurry. So everybody pray that Mr. Durable and Dependable can continue to be that. So I'm still a little concerned about the depth. I'm still a little bit concerned about the matchups where you probably have to play man-to-man against some of these teams coming up. What does this defense look like against Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry? That's still a concern, but they kind of are a concern against everybody right now, the way that they're playing. But ultimately, I think we were kind of waiting for that big test. It happened against the Chiefs, and I don't really care about Rashee Rice's injury and all that. It's still Patrick Mahomes. It's still Andy Reid. It's still Travis Kelce. And they passed that test with flying colors. So I'm much more confident in the ceiling of this defense after seeing them perform that way against that team going forward. And the upcoming schedule is pretty manageable outside of 1 or 2 games here and there.
Yeah, there are definitely detractors from that Chiefs game, and ultimately, yes, they didn't have Rashee Rice, Brown, Pacheco. Yeah, that does matter, but like scheme for scheme, hey, Andy Reid's still Andy Reid, Mahomes is still Mahomes. Like they can still scheme something open. Like Andy Reid is still that guy, obviously, and the fact that they really weren't able to do it outside of the one explosive kind of coverage bust play is really impressive. And then the random, pass to Kelce early in the game. But yes, there will be far better talent across from them coming up. You mentioned the Bengals, the Ravens, the Falcons are probably the best like quad of receiver 1, tight end 1, running back, and quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't think there's another group that matches that. Sure, there are better quarterbacks or better receivers or better tight ends, but that 1, 2, 3, 4 is insane. Now, granted, they did do very well against the Raiders, against Bowers and Adams, but then you have Zamir White and Gardner Minshew. Not quite the same thing as Kirk Cousins and Bijan Robinson. So, I am still very encouraged by this defense. The defense is legit. The question on the title of the episode is the defense legit? It is. I don't expect this, barring several injuries, I don't expect this to change. It's the in vogue defense right now. McDonald, of course, now Minter. Like, it is kind of the in vogue sort of thing people are looking for. So maybe in 2 years we're not talking about this defense the same way. But right now I think it's legit and it's here to stay.
Yeah, this like Ravens style defense is being run in Miami and Tennessee, obviously in Baltimore. There's a lot of teams kind of chasing this, which is why we're a little scared about Jesse Minter potentially going elsewhere. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. One last thing here that I wanted to point out: Travis Kelce on his podcast mentioned that there were a couple calls that Jesse Minter had that just completely confused the Kansas City Chiefs. And like, let me repeat that the Jesse Minter calls were confusing the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, when that isn't a real rarity in today's NFL with that staff, with that quarterback, where you have a guy who can dial up 2 or 3 calls that kind of, fluster the Chiefs. That's a massive, massive advantage where you play against other quarterbacks who are not Patrick Mahomes and other coaches who are not Andy Reid. And maybe that gets turned up to 5 or 6 or 7. I mean, we're seeing what Brian Flores is doing on a week-to-week basis. And Jesse Minter is in that same kind of territory right now of confusing opposing offenses. And Jesse doesn't really have all of the horses I think that he would want. And obviously the linebacker group has been a bit injured with Junior Colson. Derwin has missed time. Alohi has missed time. Jasir Taylor missed this past, Jasir Taylor did not play this week. And so it's so refreshing to see the defensive coordinator position be a real advantage for the first time in a long time. Like, I mean, because Gus Bradley was like fine. Gus Bradley was fine. He was never an advantage, really. Obviously, Brandon Staley was not. So it's been a long time. Maybe Chuck Pagano for a year, maybe.
Yeah. Sorry. Which one was the Colts coordinator? I know it's Pagano, or head coach. Is that Chuck? Is it John Pagano?
John Pagano.
The Chargers?
Might be John Pagano. Either way.
But I never. Okay, they had the number 1 defense that year. They missed the playoffs, right?
In 2010.
Maybe then. Maybe about then. But yeah, it's certainly been a minute. They've had fine defenses. They've even had maybe even some half decent defenses. But to actually actively see your head coach, or excuse me, your defensive coordinator be the reason for that great defense, and the scheme being that reason, and the way they're playing and the fundamentals and all that. Yeah, no, it's been a minute. Like you said, Brandon Staley. Gus Bradley. Almost feel like we have to apologize to him after seeing what Brandon Staley did. And now he's blitzing a lot, which is super hilarious. But yeah, no, it's been a minute. We've seen good defensive play, but in terms of the coordinator,
Yeah, the 2018 Gus Bradley defense was good. The 2020 defense actually is a lot better when you look at the numbers than I remember it being.
Oh yeah,
Gus can get his defense to functionable, passable, good.
Yeah,
but what Jesse Minter is doing right now is kind of crazy. We are certainly not accustomed to seeing this level of defense by the Chargers. So it's going to be really curious. There's a lot of season left, but there's a lot of these veterans who are playing very well, who are on 1-year contracts. And so the offseason discourse about potentially bringing back Poona Ford and Christian Fulton and Elijah Molden, who are these key pieces right now, Denzel Perryman, do they value them in that way where they bring them back? We'll see. Khalil Mack needs to be re-signed. He needs to be kept around. He still is playing at a very, very high and disruptive level. Obviously, he's the leader of the defense right now. So that Khalil Mack has shown no signs of regression. I know that some people are kind of like, oh, he's only averaging 3 pressures a game. Last year, he averaged 5.5. It's well, watch the tape. You see this guy crushing the pocket every single week, and he is making life hell for these opposing offensive tackles. So wanted to give a quick shout out to Khalil Mack before we move on to the next.
Oh topic. Yeah, definitely. You don't need to reset the market with Khalil Mack. Just bring him back and obviously pay him what he will ultimately be worth should he stay healthy. Even just the consistency of what he's okay, if you get 3-4 pressures a game, couple of run stops, you collapse the pocket and you're around, every game you've been playing for the Chargers, that's so much better for this unit, for the locker room. Obviously, clearly it's not hurting the defense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like having Khalil Mack is not, to the defense's detriment at all. So I'm all in favor of it. And it's, Joey Bosa, honestly, I thought heading into the season, the decision was already easy enough to let him go. It is now very much, I mean, if it wasn't a decision before, it is now, like at the end of this season. Like it is time to move on. Yeah. If it wasn't already, we expected him to have been gone. He wasn't. Obviously, they saw in one game what he could do when he was healthy. We've also seen the not so much.
Yeah.
So it's Khalil Mack has to stay, especially with Joey Bosa being the obvious release choice, and Thule, probably being your starter next year, but hasn't shown a ton. But that's not really on him.
Yeah, Thule's playing great against the run. He was much more productive as a pass rusher this past week. So was Bud Dupree, for what it's worth. So the Chargers are currently projected to have $77 million in cap space next year. If they were to move on from Joey Bosa, that would free up $25 million in cap space. Yeah. And you can just take that $25 million and say, okay, here you go, Khalil. Here's your new contract.
Yeah, fine by me. And I don't, whatever Fulton, Poona Ford, these guys end up getting, it's not going to break the bank. There's still that bias towards, this guy in this round, or you didn't live up to this billing or whatever. So Fulton will come out a discount. I don't know what my priority would be. I don't know how easy it is, how easy they think it is to find a replacement at nose tackle. But I think Fulton's probably my number one priority, especially with Zont maybe being the odd man out there. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think you could reasonably bring back both of those players. I mean, you're talking about potentially, $100 million in cap space once you move on from Joey Bosa.
Oh, yeah.
So you can bring back whoever you want to bring back. I think Denzel Perryman, I think his role is really valuable, but he's a guy where, I mean, Deion's playing fantastic. Junior Colson has looked really good in his limited role. You drafted those two to be the future. Like that's the group that you're going to roll with, I think. So
yeah,
that becomes pretty clear very quickly. But I think, to me, Christian Fulton, I would like to see brought back, just because cornerbacks are really difficult to find. And not that Fulton is like your true CB1, but if you go into next season without a legit starting cornerback on the outside, that's really difficult to find. Even though I like Dean Leonard, handing him the starting role next season and then like a rookie, let's say hypothetically, is just that's tough. I think that's something that this team is probably going to want to avoid happening. So I do kind of think that if Fulton keeps this up and he stays healthy, then he should come back. And he wants, like, I think he would want to come back, because he loves playing in this defense. You can see him just playing so confident and physical. And this is not the same kind of cornerback that we saw in Tennessee this past couple of seasons. So that's a decision I think is trending towards, them bringing back. Maybe they look at Mike Elston and the work he's done with Otito Ogbonia and what they kind of found on these one-year contracts and say, okay, like we can kind of play in the margins a bit at defensive tackle. Maybe we draft a nose tackle legit, in the first 3 rounds next year and can kind of mess around that way. But Fulton, I think, is a lot more difficult to replace.
Yeah, it's, even if you go find a quote unquote better corner, like it is, as we've seen, no guarantee that corner steps in and is the guy for you. Like already having this guy in there and he tackles, like that, I don't see why he isn't one of the 2 corners. Doesn't mean he has to be CB1, but Asante Samuel Jr. will prove all his critics wrong this season.
The season has started, by the way.
Yeah. So the thing with Zont is that the critics of Asante Samuel Jr. are generally not in the realm of coverage. I think most agree. You can have degrees of how good of a coverage corner he is, but it's about his tackling, and it's been the worst of the season. So I don't. The critics are specifically on his tackling and playing the run and how offenses target him in the run game or screens or whatever. And he's not playing that very well. Statistically, he's not playing that well, and we've seen it on film too. So it's currently the worst missed tackle rate of his career.
Yeah. So Fulton's playing the run better. He's playing
Oh yeah.
the pass tackling aspect better, and he's making more of an impact as a coverage defender. So I like Asante Samuel Jr. I think he's a fine
Yeah.
cornerback two to have on your roster. But we've all been kind of waiting for him to prove the doubters wrong and like have this breakout season to happen. And I think we've just kind of realized that this is who he is. He's a fine cornerback too. There's going to be some issues to have, and unfortunately, that breakout is just not happening. Much like a other former first round pick of this team on the offensive line, but that's okay. All right, Tyler. Any other thoughts about the defense before we get to some of these questions?
No, I think it's just kudos to them. Kudos to this unit. They've been incredible.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun to watch. Every single week when I pop on the tape, there's like 3 or 4 calls where I'm just like, ooh, that's the good stuff, man. Jesse Minter is dialing up the right switches right now. So it's been fun to watch. The veterans are fully bought in, you can tell. So it's a great group right now. All right. We'll take questions for about the next 40 minutes or so, depending how my voice handles the next 40 minutes and what kind of questions you guys have for us. So feel free and fire away any kind of questions you want us to touch on, whether that be, during the season things, off-season things. I know we always get like food questions from time to time. So feel free and fire away. As always, super chats are appreciated and ensure that your questions get answered. And we'll start with our first super chat here from our guy, Athir. He says the next 5 games, he expects the Chargers to win them all. Coach Harbaugh is here not to lose these games, including Denver. Steven, LOL. What are your thoughts about the next game? 5 games going undefeated?
Okay, so let's just rattle them off. So at Denver, at Arizona, against the Saints, at Browns, and then against the Titans. So the best team on that schedule is the Saints, and thankfully they do play them at home. 3 road games in the next 5 is not fun. I reserve the right to change this depending on how Herbert is and how Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater look. My assumption is that they're at least improved. It seems like Joe Alt's going to play. The fact that he was even like questionable for half a second last week was insane. I think Joe Alt plays. We'll see about Slater. I think the Chargers will win the game in Denver, which is going to bite me in the ass. I know it. But right now, I just think watching Bo Nix average like -1 yard per attempt last week. Granted, they played the Jets in the rain. But given how it's looked and given how this defense has looked with Jesse Minter, like I feel pretty good. And this is not – Denver is still very talented on defense, but they're not quite the same as they were in the earlier Herbert years where they just harassed Herbert and they had Simmons playing, at his great level and all that. So I think they'll win that one. So that's kind of the big one for me. And then it's the Saints. I don't know. Ask me again in a couple of weeks. But 5-0, I just don't think it happens. And that is not to mean that I can't make up a reason they win every game. It's just 5-0 is very difficult because stuff happens.
Yeah, 5-0 is very, very difficult. So the Broncos defense presents a challenge because they blitz at the highest rate in the NFL right now. I think they're at 45%, and the next closest one is like 40%, which is last year Brian Flores was at 53%, which is crazy. So this Broncos defense does a lot of similar things to the Vikings defense, where they try and they'll put 8 people at the line and they'll drop players that you're kind of out of nowhere trying to think. They'll play a lot of cover 1 because they really trust their cornerbacks to handle things. And obviously Patrick Surtain is the best cornerback in the league. He's been awesome to start the season. Riley Moss, their other cornerback, looks like he's kind of taken a significant step forward too. So it's going to present a very difficult challenge for the Chargers offense, especially if Rashawn Slater is not playing. We saw a glimpse of like their specific plan. If Rashawn is not playing, then Joe Alt lined up at left tackle at practice on Wednesday. Trey Pipkins at right tackle, Jamari Sawyer at right guard, and then Bozeman and Zion obviously kind of rounding out. I feel okay about that unit's chances to hold up a decent amount because really against the Broncos, you probably only need to score like 17 points to win that game. I don't know, man, but playing in Denver is just it's such a tough place for the Chargers over the last 10 years that it's really difficult. But that being said, if they can win this game, it just really would do so much for their potential playoff chances. Trey Wingo pointed this out that since the NFL moved to 17 games and 7 wildcard teams, if you are 3-2 after 5 games, your playoff chances are historically about like 55-60%. Whereas if you're 2-3 after 5 games, your playoff chances are like 30%. So a win in Denver would mean a lot just because it's in Denver and it would be kind of a signal of things to come. But also from a playoff chance perspective, 3-2 is a huge difference versus 2-3.
Where did the Jets play in Denver, or did Denver play?
They played in New York.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah,
and then they beat the Jets, so there's sort of a potential wild card tiebreaker there, I guess, if the Chargers beat the Broncos. Yeah, no, winning in Denver would be huge, and I think you finally get Harbaugh to finally overcome this thing in Denver, and I just don't know if Denver really has it right now. But if Herbert is like, it's, oh my gosh, the ankle is worse, then forget it. If that game starts with the Chargers only scoring 3 to 7 points in the first half, and the Broncos are winning that one, because the Chargers have not been able to figure out at all in the second half. They only get worse with injuries, with Herbert's ankle like starting to get worse. It just feels like the offense tapers off. So if they can score 10 to 14 in the first half, I feel good. If they're struggling on offense, I think the game's over. I think Broncos will just figure out a way to ugly win it somehow.
Yeah, that's totally possible. There are other games I feel good about their chances to win. They should beat the Cardinals on the road, especially because that game they should be getting their guys back. So, DJ Chark should return to practice according to Ian Rappaport this upcoming week. We'll see about Rashawn Slater and Joey Bosa, but none of those injuries are considered like super long term. And so if they miss this upcoming week against the Broncos, they should be back next week. And I think we should not underrate the importance of Nick Niemann coming back for this Chargers special teams unit. Right now, they've had Cam Hart be the personal protector on punt team, and they just signed Blake Lynch off the street to play special teams for them against the Chiefs. Nick Niemann is one of the best special teams players in the league, and Ryan Ficken trusts him immensely. So his return after the bye is going to be huge from a special team standpoint. And obviously just gives them some more depth at linebacker that they, have been very comfortable with playing Troy Dye, but we'll see about Nick Niemann. So, they should win they should be able to beat the Cardinals. They should be able to beat the Saints, in my opinion, at home. They should be able to beat the Browns. They should be able to beat the Tennessee Titans. There's a chance that this next few games gives them a lot of momentum heading into the back half of the season. 5-0, I think they'll lose one of these games, but I think there's a very good chance that they go 4 or 5.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then, which is good. Then you face the Bengals at home, the Ravens at home, the Falcons, Chiefs, Bucks. That we talked about, difficult stretches before the season started. Yeah, it's still the same. And we kind of overlooked Atlanta. Thinking like, okay, like how good could they be? Yeah, but they can score, obviously, and they're starting to really gel. They've been very competitive. So yeah, Bengals, Baltimore, Ravens, Chiefs, Bucks. That's the next 5. So Athir, do you think they go 5-0 with that next 5?
That's probably a bigger question. All right, we'll get to Jose's here next. How should the Chargers approach the offensive line in 2025? Obviously, Rashawn Slater is due for an extension. Joe Alt, you're not touching his contract. Trey Pipkins would be in the last year of his contract, and then Zion Johnson, they would have to decide if they want to pick up his 5th-year option. And then center is a question mark because both Bozeman and Brendan Hymas would be free agents heading into the offseason. So, Tyler, when you're looking about future offensive line in 2025, what's kind of your where do you want to start there, and what's kind of your thought process there?
Yeah, it's so difficult. You have to start at center, whatever it ends up being. I think you keep, obviously you have your tackles, great. I think Slater is worthy of the extension, but it's obviously more risky by the year, by the game. So you have your tackles figured out. I think Zion sticks around in that 4th year, but is not on the 5th year option. I don't think. I think if, hey, he plays really well in that 4th year, you can have a conversation about bringing him back. I don't think he's done enough right now to earn that. He's far better than a lot of Chargers fans think he is, but that's mostly a run game dependent thing. He's extremely frustrating in specific moments in the pass game, which is not worthy of the money they'd have to pay them for that 5th year option.
Yeah.
So I think you go Zion plays left guard. He's not awful in the run game. Like, I think he's a serviceable guard at this point. And given the rookie contract, you just keep him around. Trey's an interesting one. I think that what's his cap? It's got to be the most next year, right? His 3rd year of this deal. The cap has got to be, what is it, $8, $9, $10 million or whatever.
Cap number would be 9.25. So it's 8.75 this year, 9.25 next year.
Yeah.
They would save 6.75 by moving on, but I don't really see a reason to do that, honestly.
Yeah, the way he looked at tackle when they threw him out at tackle, like, no, you're not paying him for that. But the way they feel about him at guard, like, they decided he was their starting guard in April or March or whatever it was. Like, they knew he was their starter.
It was like after one practice of OTAs.
Right. He's not above replacement, obviously. Like, I'm sure there are options, but this interior free agent class, unless you go get Trey Smith, feels kind of light. So really it just comes down to how much can we throw at the center position, and how much can we throw at a young center, and how much can we add in the draft as well. Like, they need to double and triple down in this interior, because not only do they not have a great center prospect, they've nothing on their roster moving forward. They just showed us they don't even trust their right guards that they've been working with in camp. I mean, they just had Sam Mustipher start against Chris Jones over McFadden and over Hymas, and stuff like that. So over Alex Leatherwood. So they got to double and triple down on this interior. And I think you just throw everything at that moving forward. Herbert needs to find, look, if you think Herbert hasn't been figuring out protection calls, or if you criticize him, this and that, whatever, ultimately, Herbert looks really freaking good when he had a Corey Linsley. This offensive line looked better when they had a Corey Linsley. They shredded the Vikings because of Corey Linsley, potentially. So I think you got to just invest a ton of money in center, because right now Bozeman is clearly not it. Hymas is not it. They need a lot there. So if I'm starting anywhere, it's there. And I don't mind if Zion and Trey are your starters moving forward.
Yeah, I don't mind that either. I think Trey, there's no real reason to cut him. I think he's been an above average starter at right tackle in the past. I think he showed that again on Sunday, where you feel comfortable about him as your starting right guard and as your swing tackle, basically. And that's a really valuable asset. So I know people are really like anti Trey Pipkins for some reason, but he's been a solid to above average starter over the last 2 seasons. And now he's kind of handling the switch to guard seamlessly. So he's staying. There's no real reason to replace him. Everybody thinks like, oh, the interior offensive line has been a huge problem. Let's just nuke it and replace 3 starters. That's extremely difficult to do in the NFL, and it matters a ton of like how you handle these moving pieces. So if you can have an above average starter, you keep that guy, and that's what Trey Pipkins has proven to be. Zion, yes, he's been a disappointment from a first round pick, and yes, he definitely is not worth his current projection of a 5th year option. So his 5th year option currently, based on the fact that he has been a very dependable starter in terms of snaps played, like he has not missed any major games yet to his career, his 5th year option would cost the Chargers $18 million, which is a lot to pay a left guard for not elite kind of performance. If theoretically, for example, he bounced back and had a really, really strong post buy and made a Pro Bowl, his 5th year option would then go up to $22.5 million. And again, that's a very different conversation if he does make a Pro Bowl versus like what he is currently in terms of his long-term future. But I can't see this regime picking up that 5th year option. Maybe if he plays at a much better level over the back half of the season than he has now, maybe they become kind of an extension where they meet in the middle there. I think that could be possible, but Zion has to earn it. So yes, this is me, Stephen Haglund, calling Zion Johnson a disappointment. Like we can acknowledge that, but he is not a horrible offensive lineman. He just has some issues that have prevented him from reaching the ceiling that we believe he has had. So the center is where I'm definitely focusing it. I am probably signing a veteran center and then also drafting a center in the first 4 or 5 rounds.
What we said this year.
Like we said this year, they should have done. And look, the best center class ever has proven to be fantastic. It would be great
really
to have
good. There's a lot of starters
now.
out there. There's like 7 rookie starters at center.
Yeah.
And Jackson Powers Johnson is playing guard. So it's just like,
yeah.
Cooper Beebe's great.
Yeah. So one of those players could be Ryan Kelly. The Colts drafted Tanner Bordellini, and he played awesome in his debut. Ryan Kelly is a little older. He'll be 33 next season, but he's probably the best veteran free agent center. So there's no Corey Linsley this time around. But if you can pay Ryan Kelly, then I think you feel a lot better about your offensive line, and then you can draft a guy of the future, etc. So a lot to change between now and then. But I think free agency money is a lot of it will be dedicated towards finding a center. Draft resources will be dedicated towards finding a center. There's other guys in here like Connor Williams. He was a free agent last year. Obviously, he's playing with the Seahawks. He's playing fine this year coming off the ACL. There's Josh Myers. There's Connor McGovern, one of the Connor McGoverns. But there's not a ton. There really is not a super deep center group right now. So Ryan Kelly is the headliner, and then Connor Williams is probably the second one after that.
Yeah, fine by me. I think they've, even with the Telesco era, they did a very good job of having and pursuing a good center. Obviously, Pouncey, then Linsley, but their issue has been the next guy up. You pursue the older, aging veteran guy. Yeah. These guys that are either before 30 or right around 30 or after 30, and they've played great, but they last a season and a half. It's a great first season, an iffy second season, and they're probably gone by the third one. So they need to continue to keep mining that, and I think they will. I think you can't help. There's no way they look at the season and go, "Yep, that was the correct decision in hindsight." Signing Bozeman was the correct decision in hindsight. Doing nothing else was the incorrect decision. So Ryan Kelly right now, obviously Bordellini played. If Bordellini is their guy moving forward, awesome. That helps the Chargers. It probably means Ryan Kelly's very expensive as maybe the only actual good center on the market, but fine by me. Like, you have the money, throw it at Ryan Kelly, and then go find someone in the draft, because they need both the short-term and the long-term plan, whereas they've really only ever had the short-term with Herbert.
Yeah, and I think the Ravens, they did a decent job of cycling through potential center options. Like, if you go look at their draft history, there's a lot of guys who could play center. So I think this is a problem that they looked at as, we just need a short-term fix. Let's sign Bradley Bozeman. Let's see what Brendan Hymus can do. And they obviously feel good about him, more so than I did. But this is an issue where, like, you can't bring both of these guys back. You shouldn't bring either one back, in my opinion. That's the spot that should be getting addressed. Next one here from Unknown. He wants to know if I think the Chargers will draft Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State. I don't know how much you've been paying attention to him, but he essentially has played 4 games, because he rested the second half yesterday, and then he rested the second half against Portland State. And in 90 carries, he has hit over 1,000 yards and has like 18 touchdowns. This is potentially the most productive running back we have ever seen in college football. Barry Sanders currently has the rushing record. Barry Sanders needed 120 carries to get to 1,000 yards. Ashton Jeanty did it in 90 carries and 1 fewer game. So this Boise State running back is potentially the best running back prospect we have ever seen. And we'll see what happens there. But Trevor Sikkema from PFF did a mock draft earlier this week, and he did have the Chargers taking Ashton Jeanty at pick number 12. Part of that, it sounds like this draft class just is not great in terms of the top end talent. There's some really interesting defensive players, but there's not a lot of, there's no Marvin Harrison in this class. There's no high end quarterback in this class. The offensive tackle class is not like last year's. So Ashton Jeanty probably is a top 15 pick. And if he is on the board when the Chargers are picking, I would not be shocked given Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman's history if he were ultimately the draft pick choice. But for me, it's far too early. I have not studied any like legitimate draft
Right.
prospects outside of just like watching the broadcast games. So
Yeah.
given who the coach is, I think yes, it's a possibility that they take a running back when it's this kind of running back. But I haven't watched any of the pass rushers. I haven't studied any cornerbacks. That's probably where I want the Chargers dedicating the first round pick to. But yeah, man, like Jim Harbaugh, I think he would love to have Ashton Jinty.
So I've only seen the highlights and I know his name and that's generally it. And I know that he's getting insane comparisons from
Yeah.
everyone. It's just like the best ever sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed, and I'm not opposed, especially if the Chargers start winning and they trend towards the 20s when they're picking, and then
Yeah.
he's there, which he won't be because we just did this with Bijan. When we mock drafted him, he was not even close to where the Chargers were picking. Neither was Gibbs, which I didn't expect.
No.
But sure. I'm not opposed. Right now, it's a stupid decision. Probably because they have so much more they need to address. But by the time they get to that point in the draft, I'm hoping they've used all of this cap space to go get that center, to bring back some of these guys, maybe to get a corner, defensive tackle, pass rusher, whatever. But yeah, I'm still trending towards defense. But at this point I could be swayed either way. You look at this offense, they could use, well, I mean, it depends who they bring back. They could use a center. Technically, they could use a right and left guard too. They could use a receiver. They could definitely use a tight end. They could use so it's just we'll see. But I'm not against it.
Yeah, I mean Colson Loveland could be an option for them. I mean that would just make so much sense given the connections.
They're an awful third down team. Right, the Chargers are an awful third down team right now. Awful passing third down team. So I'm not opposed.
Yeah. I was listening to Dane Brugler this week on the Athletic Football Show, and he's normally very, very coy, and he does not throw out comparisons who are very outlandish very often. He's very normally reserved in that regard. He flat out compared Ashton Jinty to LaDainian Tomlinson and Barry Sanders, like right off the bat. And those are two of the 5 best running backs in college and NFL history. So Ashton Jinty is averaging over 10 yards per carry right now. He's forcing like 11 missed tackles per game. And also he's getting like an explosive reception every single game. So he's an unreal talent. I hope he is in New York for the Heisman ceremony. But we'll see about draft picks. From Zigloxy, what areas of improvement should the Chargers focus on during this opportunity week, as Coach Harbaugh calls it?
Third down offense. I mean, Jesus Christ, the passing attack for this team on third down is dreadful. First off, don't get the penalties to put you in a bad third down and long to begin with. Then figure out how the heck to protect your quarterback on third down. Then maybe figure out how to, I don't know, separate on third down. And then maybe figure out who the heck your check down option is right now. There's nobody. The Chargers do not have an easy check down option right now that actually can do something functional with the football. I mean, Eckler, even last year, his bad year, I think through 4 games, he had 170 or 150 receiving yards just through those 4 games. I think the running backs right now for the Chargers have 50, 48. I think it's 49 yards through 4 games. They need something, and Hayden Hurst ain't it right now. Now, if they find a way to get those guys involved, cool. Work with the guys you got. Awesome. Right now, there's no option. So it's just, Quentin, go try to get, nope, not happening on third down. You're getting pressed. Okay, it's Ladd McConkey, and that's it. I mean, that's where they're at right now. So that's it for me.
Yeah, the overall, like the offense needs to figure it out in the passing game perspective, and I think it'll be better going forward. Getting DJ Chark back will help. We have to point out that DJ Chark is a contested catch vertical threat. He's not exactly going to solve your third down passing issues because he's not an instant separator. He's not Keenan Allen. He's not Ladd McConkey, for example. His open score on ESPN's tracking data last year was like slightly better than Quentin Johnston, and his average yards per separation created was like second worst in the league, only behind Devontae Parker. So he has value to this team. I think he will help because right now they do not have any kind of vertical presence. They just don't. So he is going to help. but that's not really like a third down fix. Overall, they have to figure out a way to stay ahead of the chains. And right now, they are converting a series into a second set of downs at the second worst rate in the league. They are having 3 and outs at the second highest rate in the league. That is a major, major issue. And right now, the defense hasn't really mattered for them. But eventually, that will come up in a game where if you are consistently having these 3 and outs and your defense is on the field the entire game, that is going to matter. I think it mattered against the Pittsburgh Steelers in that specific game. But overall, as a season, the defense has been able to handle it. So they have to convert more first downs. They have to be able to stay ahead of the chains. And then, solving the third down passing I think would be a big, big help. So I think it should be better. If you look at the first 2 games of the season, the Chargers were second in the league in rushing success rate. And then the last 2 games, they were 32nd. So they have not been able to stay ahead of the chains at all. And that has been a major issue against the Steelers and the Chiefs, who are 2 of the most complex and efficient pass rush units in the league.
I didn't realize it fell off that far. Wow.
Yeah, it was not great. So got to stay ahead of the chains, convert more first downs, and that'll help the passing attack, I think, get in a bigger rhythm. Good question from Wrong Speedy here. When Neiman returns, who will they cut? So Neiman will come back. DJ Chark will come back. And it is going to be very interesting to see who the Chargers decide to cut in this, because I think keeping the 7 receivers active on the roster is not super sustainable. Brendan Rice has not really played a whole lot. Linebacker wise, they can't cut Troy Dye, so they're going to have to find a defensive special teams cut elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about those 2 potential roster transactions next week?
I didn't think of that. So bye Easton Stick. I don't know. Herbert's still hurt. I think they'll keep him around.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I do think at this point you have oh my god, why am I blanking on his name? Brendan Rice is probably that guy to go. Like, we're looking for the 4th running back and the 7th receiver. I think those guys could potentially go. If they don't care at all about Jordan McFadden, like, I don't know if they cut him. God, it's really tricky because they didn't even bring up a 5th edge rusher on the roster that maybe they could have cut. They're not cutting one of the DBs. Is it Vidal and Rice?
I think that's an option. Those are the 2 ones that have been healthy scratches.
Inactive. Even a Boybe was active last week, right?
Yeah. Stone Smart could be an option, but he's a core starter on punt return and kick return and punt coverage. So I don't know if they would want to do that. Some people will point out Hassan Haskins, but Hassan Haskins has the 2nd most special team snaps on the league. Like, he is a core 4 special teams player for them. And for whatever reason was the key pass protector at the end of the game on Sunday against the Chiefs, which is another decision I don't fully understand. I think cutting Kamani Vidal, would be a really big mistake, because he showed enough in the preseason where he would have options elsewhere, I think, if he gets cut.
Oh yeah.
And we're like, I don't know what to do with Gus Edwards right now, but it's not been very good. And I've been willing to be a little bit patient with him because of his own injury history, the lack of preseason and training camp reps. The offensive line was banged up. But if he cannot run the football the next couple of weeks against the Broncos, you want to run the football. They're a not very good run defense. And then the Cardinals are an awful, awful run defense. They're like 28th in the league right now. If Gus Edwards can't get going against those 2, then it's probably just not in the cards this year. And Kamani Vidal should be the guy to take over RB2 at minimum after that. So if you cut him, you risk losing out on your potential RB2. So I think you try and keep him and you figure it out elsewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a reason to kind of space this out and give DJ Chark a full other week to recover. And you can kind of just activate Nick Niemann and cut somebody this week. And then next week, maybe after Justin Herbert gets healthy, then you can cut Easton Stick. maybe kind of maneuver the roster a bit that way.
Yeah. It has oh my gosh. Has Junior Colson been practicing, or has he been
He has not been practicing. So
is that just an IR switch there?
I think if the injury were bad enough, it would have happened already. Theoretically, after a hamstring injury should be good after 3 weeks. Like he should be able to return next week or the week after. So I don't know.
So not Scott Matlock. Boygby, you don't cut him. I really don't have a good answer for this one. I mean, Easton Stick's an easy answer in my opinion, and clearly they no longer have this worry about who's the QB2. But Herbert's not 100% either, which means they'll probably keep him. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for this one. It's probably Brendan Rice, and then it's the most likely to clear waivers guy.
Yeah, so they could cut Eric Tomlinson if they wanted to. He's a vested veteran, so they could kind of do the same thing with Tony Jefferson that they've done, and they're not using him a ton.
I'm not gonna lie, I didn't realize Eric Tomlinson was on the roster. So yeah, that's the answer.
Okay.
My apologies for taking that long to get to that answer.
That's
okay. I thought he was an elevation.
Yeah, no, he is on the active roster, so they could cut him, put him back on the practice squad, which was I think the plan initially. Maybe that's your easy choice, but I don't know. We'll see. They have thrown him the football a few more times than I would have expected, and
well, twice.
Honestly, I wasn't expecting that, man. Like I really wasn't.
No kidding.
And he's also he's getting fewer reps than Scott Matlock. Like when they signed him, I was like, oh, okay, like this is your
totally.
This is your second blocking tight end. This is your guy to kind of give them some stability there. And he has fewer blocking snaps than Matlock does. So I don't know. That's probably the decision. And I'm also sorry that it took us that long to get there.
Yeah, that's the obvious one. Special teams, he's played. So he played 13 against Kansas City, but otherwise, single digits the rest of the way.
I think that's because they've had some injuries. So I think he's playing more on special teams because of other people around him getting hurt.
I'm sorry, he's had one target, so that's more than Steven expected. The one target.
I could have sworn there were a couple in there.
Maybe there was a penalized one that didn't count.
Maybe. Tyler, have you thought about any trade deadline candidates? We did a trade deadline video before the season. Have you looked any more into that? This from NSN.
Yeah, it's tricky. My thought process is obviously within like the offense at this point. If the defense wants to continue to find guys, awesome. I don't know that it's completely necessary, but I wouldn't mind. Continue to load up. There were a couple names, but I don't know. Like, what are the Chargers even going to go for at this point? Are they going to go for anyone expensive? I don't think so. Everyone's going to say Mark Andrews till it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I guess. Like, I'm not opposed, obviously, but we'll see if it even happens. There was a player, oh gosh, that the Ravens drafted. What is his name? I think I wrote this down too, and now I don't know where it went.
Are you talking about the tight end, Kolar?
No, look at a receiver or even an offensive lineman. Who was it? I don't know. I started an article and I completely forget who I even freaking mentioned. The Colts have 1 million receivers, and one of them they're not using. I think what's his face is now a backup, even though he's pretty good. Go free Bo Melton.
What's his face in Indianapolis? Are you talking about like
the fourth guy?
Alec Pierce?
There you go. Sure. Go get Alec Pierce. I don't know.
Hey, listen, and Romeo Dobbs is like throwing a tantrum.
Yeah. For the lack of targets.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I will also take it. He'd be perfect for this offense.
Yeah. He actually would be perfect.
Yeah, I think you would still be looking for some pass rush help along the interior if that would ever come to fruition. Maybe a corner still. People asking about the tight end spot. I think you're probably like Cody Spencer actually sent in a super chat about this, about Kyle Pitts. ESPN has 80 pass catchers in their overall tracking data, and Kyle Pitts is 80th overall in that list. So he is not getting open right now. He is not catching the football. He does have a high yak score though. So there's obviously some untapped athletic potential there, but he clearly has not been the same player since his rookie season. There was a knee injury his second season that really, I think, has hurt his overall athleticism, and obviously has not been on the same page as Kirk Cousins. And then Mark Andrews, like, he's not getting traded. The Ravens are trying to win a Super Bowl, and he at best or at worst is like their second most important offensive skill position player. So that one is definitely not happening. There are some other tight ends out there that I think maybe could be a potential option for this team. Like Mike Gesicki in Cincinnati is not a terrible target for me because they have Eric All, who is kind of like the next guy there. Tyler Conklin on the Jets. I've mentioned him a couple of seasons previously. Chigo Okonkwo from the Titans. You could just continue that bit if they continue to have a poor season. Daniel Bellinger from the Giants, maybe. Like that's kind of the realm where it's more of a potential guy who is being replaced by a younger player or a young player who just can't get on the field right now. That's not Mark Andrews and Kyle Pitts right now.
Yeah, there's really not much out there. It's kind of unfortunate going through the list. There's no like, oh, Hawkinson's available, great. Like there's nothing like that, and it's tricky because you want to find targets on teams that aren't doing well and teams that aren't in your division, and it really just starts to narrow it down. You know, everyone's like, oh, let's go get Devontae Adams, guys. Like the Raiders aren't going to do that one. I mean, thanks to Lesko, I guess, if you want to, but I don't think they're doing that one.
Yeah. Unlike the center position, it does sound like there's upcoming tight end class is very good again. So that is a good thing for the Chargers, where it sounds like there's a few options. Obviously, Colston Loveland is a potential first rounder. Alex Katzen can do a video about this later on, but it does sound like a good tight end class coming up.
Good. Because you got Disley locked in, no problem. Find your pass catcher, find another one, find a third one, find a fourth one, and then we'll be good.
Yeah, and I do expect them to put some more resources into this. Like they at least did sign 2 free agents. Like they tried to get the tight end position right from a veteran standpoint. I think they will be aggressive in the draft and try and find their future pass catcher next year.
Have they really only drafted Trey McKitty at tight end? That's the only thing they've done since we've been watching we've been covering the Chargers.
Yep.
You get your tight end and like it. It's Trey McKitty.
Yeah.
Oh man. It was all gas.
The Ravens drafted a shit ton of tight ends while that Joe Ortiz was there. I just think it was like they had too many other positions of need where they felt like they had to cover, and they felt comfortable with Disley and Hayden Hurst and figure out the other spots. But next year I do expect them to draft a tight end, maybe 2, and get some young pieces behind Will Disley.
Yay.
And I sent back with a super chat. Got to watch Ginty run all over my Ducks, and he was absolutely ridiculous. If he's available, Harbaugh will get him. So a lot of love for Ashton Ginty. I think rightfully so. The running back class also seems to be a very, very good running back class in the draft. So Chargers have Vidal long term. We'll see what that looks like. But J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards obviously around for the short term. So running back could be a position to watch in the draft next year.
Yep.
Athir with another super chat. He says, giving Minter 2 weeks to prepare for a rookie quarterback. LOL. Yes, that should be very fun. We have not seen him play a quarterback who is this green quite yet. So should be a good time.
Yeah, it should be. It should be fun.
Position of strength of this upcoming draft from Sergeant Romano. Again, have not done any draft work myself, but listening to other people, it sounds like cornerback is one of the main position groups of strength. A lot of that is tied to Travis Hunter and like what he decides to do in the NFL. To me, he's a guy who should absolutely play cornerback, but at the same time, like the wide receiver contracts in this league are crazy. So it wouldn't surprise me if he decided to play cornerback. But to me, he's more of a true difference maker in the NFL at corner. If he decides to play corner, there's 3 or 4 guys in the first round who should be like top 10 picks. And then there's some other pieces after that, according to most other people. So cornerback sounds like a great position group. Running back sounds like it's very strong. Tight end sounds like it's very strong. Defensive tackle sounds like it's pretty strong. That's probably where you're focusing the strength of for this class.
Sounds good to me. We'll get there, and I'm sure we'll be all sorts of takes. So far, I think our projections for the 2024 class are doing pretty well. I think we had, Joe Alt tackle 1 feels pretty good. Jared Verse, pretty good. So yeah, feeling pretty good.
This is one that's interesting to me. If Hunter Henry is available for trade, I would love to see it. I would have loved to see it last year. He's currently their most productive pass catcher in New England. So I don't know, but I would love to see it. I would love to see him come back. I'm
not opposed. What is he looking like statistically these days? Obviously, he said he's more productive. He started off not being worth the money for them, but I feel like he's quietly, settled in. Oh, wow, he had 600 yards that first year. Never mind, good for him. 148 yards. Sure. Wow, he's really been that. He's at 4,000 career receiving yards. Good for him.
Yeah, good for him. Right now, the tight end position is kind of a mess. But yeah, Hunter Henry's doing pretty well for himself.
Cool.
Okay, last one here. I think this is a fun one from Wrong Speedy. Halloween season obviously coming up. Do you guys have a Halloween costume planned? If so, what is it?
I'm the Ancient Aliens guy. Was it Aliens? What does he do? Like Aliens? Halloween costumes. Nope, have nothing planned for this year. I'll think of something.
Yeah. We are doing a Spirit Week at our school with the last day of the Spirit Week being Halloween on the Thursday. And so we decided to do a costume day. And so everybody's going to dress up as their Halloween costumes. And me and my coworkers have decided, not all of them, but my friends who are coworkers have decided to dress up as our students that day in a way to like make fun of them. So I'm gonna go get some like pajama bottoms and get like a t-shirt that's 5 sizes too big and just like go as a student and make fun of them. So that'll be a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yes. Somehow we teach the same students. Somehow I could have probably worn the same thing.
Yeah.
So yeah. I don't know. Either that or anyway. No, nothing planned.
Fashion trends in my current group of students are so dumb to me. Like who decided that wearing pajama pants was cool again needs to be fired. The baggy pants coming back, was not expecting those trends to return. It's just hilarious seeing stuff from like when my oldest brother was in middle school, like coming back. I don't understand what is going on, but yeah.
We could all dress as Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, there were a few people who went dressed up as Brandon Staley to the game around Halloween. So I would expect to see a lot more Jim Harbaugh costumes since he's a lot more popular.
How do you dress as Brandon Staley? You just like get on your hands and knees and do like the pose, like the.
I think it was like the headset, and then like people like scribbled on like a little stubble of a beard, and then they had like a paper sheet that said like 4th down go or something like that.
Oh, okay. I see it. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. Anyways. All right, guys. That's gonna do it for us today. Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
Nope. See you guys on Tuesday.
All right. We'll see you guys on Tuesday. Back to a normal schedule next week as the Chargers prepare for their game in Denver. Should be a lot of fun. We appreciate you guys for tuning in today. This has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. As always, bolts up.
I'm going to hit the right one.